He seems drawn to works that develop a cult following. In series television, he's appeared on Twin Peaks and Sex and the City, and has even spent time on Wisteria Lane as Bree's husband Orson on Desperate Housewives. On the big screen, he has starred in Dune, Showgirls, and Blue Velvet, and embodies the character of real-life immigration lawyer Charles Foster in Mao's Last Dancer. Hello, I'm Ernie Manouse. Coming up on InnerVIEWS, our conversation with Golden Globe and Emmy-nominated actor Kyle MacLachlan. What is it you love most about acting?
Something about creating the character, making somebody up, even someone who is, that I might be playing who is a real person, like Charles Foster in Mao's, who I'm playing now, or Ray Manzarek in The Doors, or I was just actually talking to my friend Bruce Greenwood about a movie I did called Against the Wall, which was about the prison riot in Attica years ago with John Frankenheimer, the late John Frankenheimer, and I played Michael Smith, one of the prison guards. And even playing a real person, there's the creating a puzzle. You know, it's like finding pieces, putting them together to make a picture, and adding little elements and little pieces along the way. And for some reason, it really appeals to me.
How much do you want to stay true to who they are, or how much doesn't really matter because now we're dealing with the picture?
Right. Well, it's a mix. You know, with Ray, I wanted to be as true as possible because he's such a recognizable person. You know, and so I worked very hard to try and capture his voice. The same with Charles Foster in Mao's Last Dancer. I really worked hard on trying to capture his particular dialect and accent because it helps me embody that person, you know, that
right.
character. So I try as hard as I can. And then some things you're just not sure about because once you have sort of created this body, this person, then you have to put him into a scene with another actor. In The Doors, for instance, it was Val Kilmer playing Morrison. So it's like, well, what was their relationship really? Was it friend? Was it father-son? Was all these different things. So once you have your character or your car, your machine, whatever it is, then you have to put them into the race, and see how they perform.
What about Cary Grant?
Oh, I forgot about him. Yeah. Cary Grant. He was
Touch of Pink.
Yeah, that was it was an effort on my part to try and capture him as closely as possible, knowing full well that I was never going to be the guy, obviously, but trying to just give a sense of him. The best thing about Cary Grant was being able to watch Tony Curtis in Some Like It Hot, who was basically doing a Cary Grant like this. I was very over the top. How are you? Only nice to see you. So you take what he did and you dial it back a little bit, and hopefully you're kind of in the range for Cary Grant.
Okay, cult works. You seem to end up in a lot of things that people end up loving for a myriad of reasons.
Yes, some for the right reasons and some for the wrong reasons.
Is that something that you think it's because of your eye, what attracts you? Why is there this tie? I mean, there's the David Lynch stuff. There's a lot of that out there.
Well, it started with the Lynch stuff. My first two films were with David, Dune and Blue Velvet. And then, of course, Twin Peaks had such a huge following. And David is he appeals, he has that cult-like appeal. There were other things along the way, but I think, in the film world, you get labeled very quickly. You're sort of placed into a I don't know, like a folder or something, and this is kind of who you are based upon, kind of your first thing out of the gate, and you can sort of track that with anyone. It's very difficult to break out of that mold. So, my first couple things with David were, particularly Blue Velvet, was very eccentric, and the character was a little mysterious and hard to sort of get a sense of who he was. And so from there, you just kind of the die has sort of been cast.
How did that relationship come to be, though?
Well, we met, I guess it was fairly traditional. I auditioned for Dune in Seattle with a casting director named Elizabeth Lustig. She's passed away. And she thought enough of my audition, and I was out of school less than a year, so I was really green, but she thought, oh, no, maybe he's got something. So she recommended me to David back down in Los Angeles, and they flew me down to meet David and Rafaela de Laurentiis. And I guess it was during that conversation where I met David. We come from the same part of the world. We're both from the Northwest. He spent some time in Boise, grew up in Boise, Idaho, and Spokane, and I'm from Yakima, so we had this kind of rapport. We both enjoyed red wine, so we talked about red wine a little bit. And just sort of clicked, which doesn't happen that often. To the point where he gave me the script and said, I want you to come back down in 4 or 5 days and screen test.
Is he, and I don't mean any disrespect by this, but if you look at his body of work, you would think there's a strange man at the core of all of this. Is he, and what's it like?
No, he's not that strange, honestly. David is he's a pretty regular guy. He's interested in different things. I mean, he's an artist in every sense, of the word. He's a filmmaker. He's actually a painter. He's a sculptor. He enjoys creating music, photography. So he's a creative being. He himself is just a joy and a pleasure. He's a really easygoing guy. He's just interested in things that are that a lot of people aren't interested in. He's interested in the subconscious, what's happening deep inside you. Although I don't think he would say that. I think it just appeals to him. Motivations of people that are of a darker nature. Yeah. And he likes to tell stories about them. I think he has a fascination with those kind of things, and out of that fascination comes his film work and his television work.
How early on were you aware Twin Peaks was catching the nation's attention?
We filmed Twin Peaks, and if you ask any of the cast members, they'll tell you that it was really just, we felt like it was anarchy, really, because ABC they were letting us work on this pilot/movie of the week, because it wasn't sure how it was going to fall out. With David Lynch, and the idea of David Lynch on television was just like, oh my God, this is so exciting, because people are not going to know what to make of it. It's going to be crazy. Right. So we did the film, and everyone signed away for 5.5 years, figuring we were going to work for 2 weeks, and done. I then went to work on a film that was not as successful, called, I'm forgetting the name. Oh, Don't Tell Her It's Me. It used to be called The Boyfriend School, with Steve Guttenberg and Shelley Long. Anyway, we don't have to go into that territory. And while I was there, the manager, Steve Guttenberg's manager, came to me and said that his partner had seen a screening, of a rough screening of Twin Peaks, the pilot, and that it was going to be huge. And I'd been in L.A., Hollywood, enough to know that was sort of, okay. But he felt strongly enough about it to try and get me as a client. That's how strongly he felt about it. And that made me kind of go, well, he wouldn't be really putting his money where his mouth is unless he thought it was really great. So that was my first kind of inkling that maybe something kind of fun and great would happen with the pilot. But it really wasn't until it aired, and by that time we'd been bought, and they decided they were going to make 7 shows. That was our initial pickup, which was, pretty minor. Yeah. But it was enough to, start the ball rolling.
How did your life change with that?
More attention, I guess. It was weird because I'd had a lot of attention when I did Dune, and that was overwhelming. Blue Velvet, not so much attention, until some of the reviewers started to say, oh, this is actually a good film, because I think people didn't really know what to make of it. And I think Pauline Kael championed it, and a few other people championed it, and suddenly there was like, oh, wait a minute, so that was a slow discovery. And I was just kind of, trying to find where I fit in to the world of Hollywood, because they didn't really know what to make of me. I wasn't successful on a large franchise like Dune or something like that, and I was on a little cult thing, but I didn't know where I should fit in. So the Twin Peaks phenomena I was kind of like, okay, I sort of recognize what this is all about. But then it kept going, and then I said, oh wow, this is and there was some of the notoriety and some of the fame, which I sort of took in stride. I wasn't really. I've never been one of those kind of people that suddenly feels like it's a kind of carte blanche to be able to misbehave and do anything I want to do. It's like, I guess some of that is just theatrical and when you train in the theater, it's a job, and you work, and you show up and you do your work and you're prepared, and and that was where I come from. So
see, you might not change, but I'm guessing the world around you changes, the way people react to you changes, so how do you keep on that path? Because I can see how easy it is to fall into the trap that a lot of people do.
Well, you got to remember also, television is not necessarily an actor's medium; it's a writer's medium. So, and they pretty much dictate what you're going to do every week. So it wasn't like we were sort of running around, taking over the asylum. We were definitely, it was still work and a job, and we were working out in Van Nuys and at a warehouse out there. It was not a very, it wasn't glamour by any means. But all of that hullabaloo, as I recall, that happens outside of the periphery of the work. It wasn't. And I say this, I'm not sure if it's true, but today there's so many more outlets, and there's so many more ways that the public can find out about actors and observe them, and under a microscope, and the paparazzi and all that. And it wasn't quite the same. This was obviously 89, 90, so things have changed since then. It's gotten worse, I think. So that impact was less. It was more just, magazines are writing about us, and that's pretty cool, and going to work, doing my thing, and hopefully this will lead to some movie stuff. And I think I did Twin Peaks, and then it was in the Doors, and then back to Twin Peaks, and so it helped. Certainly helped the career.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Well, and you talk about that and say about how different it is today than then, which I think makes even back then more amazing for me, because what they did have available to them all focused on this show. It was groundbreaking television. It was grabbing the attention of the community watching, and lived on so long after the show stopped.
That's the thing that I find kind of amazing, is how long it's sort of hung around and has resonated. And even I get fan mail now from kids that are like 18, 19. They weren't even born when we did it. And they're like, oh, my God, I found this, or my parents showed me this, or it's great. I love Cooper. He's so cool, And it's really fun to see a whole other generation, simply because of the DVD thing, they found Twin Peaks.
Okay, I want to ask you just a little bit about Showgirls.
Of course.
I have seen 2 different comments from you about her, comments attributed to you.
Right.
One saying that you walked out of the premiere, and another one saying, no, you stayed through the premiere.
No, the story is, here's the story. Okay. So I'm so excited. Showgirls, Paul Verhoeven,
brilliant director.
RoboCop, one of my favorite. I mean, I love RoboCop. I just love the edge, the hardness of it. It's so good. Some of his great work when he was we did Spetters and Soldier of Orange, and I was like, okay, this is going to be fantastic. Basic Instinct, I was like, wow, this is going to be really great. And he's a phenomenal filmmaker. And we read Showgirls, and I said, this is pretty, pretty out there, but I think it's going to be great. You go in with all the best intentions, right? we do the film. I work. I come in, I do my work, and I'm pretty much gone. I'm not really involved in all the dance stuff. And we're shooting in South Lake Tahoe. It's one of the great ski winters. So I'm skiing when everyone else is working if I'm not working. So I'm like, I'm doing my thing. And they finish the film, and I do some scenes. I do scenes with Elizabeth, and said, these are fine, they're good, they should be okay, and no flags. Anyway, come to promotion time, and I say, well, I'd like to see the film before I talk about it. So I go to a screening that they have for me the day before we're supposed to go on the press tour, And I sort of sit down, I'm excited, and nervous, sit down, and I start watching, and I watch the first scene, and I go, boy, that was not very good. And I'm like, wow, okay, I watch the second scene. But there's always that scene, no, the next one, it'll get better. So anyway, I sit through the whole screening, and I'm just stunned, because I think the movie is horrible. And I'm like, this is terrible. And I said, and I just said, you know what, I got sick for the press tour. I just said, I'm out of here. Pretty much bailed on it, which they weren't very happy about, which you probably couldn't do today. But I was, and of course it came out and the reviews were scathing, as they should have been. But then it has this whole second life, because it's so over the top and so campy, people have sort of embraced it for that. It certainly wasn't the intention of the filmmakers starting out,
Right.
but it's found its niche.
Where do you think it went wrong?
Oh, I just think that, how do you make a story about, those kind of high camp relations? There's no way, and
But
the way it was written.
when you read the script, when you thought about it, and you said, "Yeah, this is something I'll do," it's got a great director attached to it.
I probably should have been smarter about that. I don't know. I saw it, and I just saw it a different kind of tone somehow. I don't know, but we've all. And I know Gina Gershon pretty well, and we've sort of embraced our inner showgirl. I think everybody has. We just sort of accepted the fact that we may have made a mistake, and on to the next. But it's fun that it's had another life, and hopefully people take it in the spirit of good, film, good intentions, gone bad, appreciate it for what it is,
Yeah. Okay, and then along the way, you end up with these 4 women, Sex and the City.
Yeah, that was a really nice thing that came along out of the blue, really. So much of my work has been directly and indirectly influenced by my work with David Lynch, and primarily Twin Peaks, because the creators of Sex and the City and the Darren Star, and then the gentleman who took over, Michael Patrick King, have such a fondness for those things, and I'm identified with that. So they respond to me because of that. So they were like, "Oh, we should bring Kyle on the show, and have him, work with Kristen Davis playing Charlotte." So that offer came completely unexpectedly, and I think I remember hearing about it and going, "Oh man, that's a great show." I'm not much of a TV watcher. I don't know if you're beginning to understand. I watch a lot of sports, but that's about it. So I was like, "Oh yes, that's a good show." And I said, "What about?" And they're like, "We want you to come on," and he's kind of an Upper East Side guy. And I said, "Oh, this is great. So I could be, how about kind of like, he's like a John Kennedy. He's athletic. I was trying to push that mold, like I was talking about earlier, a little bit. Like let's make him, more virile, regular guy." And they're like, "Yeah, that's fine. But he's going to have a mother issue, and he's going to be impotent. So are you okay with that?" And I was like, I can't win.
Yay.
I can't win. And I was like, all right, what am I going to do? So anyway, we get in, and it's interesting storytelling, and I really enjoyed working with Kristen. She's fantastic. She's very funny. Writing, of course, was brilliant. And, what started as just kind of a 6-show commitment sort of ballooned into like a 2-year stay for me, and I really enjoyed it. And working in New York City is, it doesn't happen that often. It's fun.
Yeah. Do you ever wonder if you had botched your Dune audition? How different this whole
I sure
career
thought
would
I
have been?
did, let me tell you.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I mean, I was so nervous. I'd never been in any situation like that before. I mean, we were at the John Dykstra's studios, Apogee Studios, and they'd built these sets, these rocks and sand, and they put me in sort of a rubber suit, and did all my hair and makeup, which I'd never had done before. In the theater, you do all your own stuff, So they did all my hair and makeup and all this, and I'd learned the stuff, learned my scenes, but no rehearsal really. And when one scene I had to talk directly to the camera, and I started, and just before I started, I turned to David and said, "David, I don't know if I can do this." I was really, really nervous, and he said, "You'll be fine. He was very helpful, very calming. And Fred Elms was behind the camera, so I just did the speech and called upon all my schooling.
Yeah.
Really, I'd had 3 years of pretty intense training, so it was like that all came to bear. And I don't know, I think in some ways it was like they were like, screen test is okay, but he's got a great quality, so we'll hire him. That's what I always say. He fits the costume,
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that was an extraordinary experience. You can't imagine,
But I just think about the career that might have been different,
It would certainly have been different.
What would you have seen if you were sitting here today and that had never happened?
Well, I don't think I would have had the same by any means, the same opportunities, I think I was like any number of young actors. I mean, I had training, and I was out of school, and I was going to pursue a job in the regional theater. And I was going to New York to live because all the casting for theaters like The Alley, like Cleveland Rep, like Actors Theater of Louisville, any of those, the Guthrie, those all came out of New York. So that's where I was going to audition for the season, as it were, of one of those theaters, and then I was going to, then I'd travel to Houston or I'd travel to Minneapolis, whatever, and work. And so I had good training, but the whole TV movie thing in LA was, we didn't have movie classes or TV classes at that time. It was just acting training.
Right.
So I was expecting to do that, and that's what would have happened. So who knows if I would have ended up, on Law and Order. I don't know, in New York. I don't know. But it was because David, and I met, and he saw something in me, and he felt confident enough to, offer me that job. And doesn't happen that often, unknown, real unknown, that they just sort of plucked out of nowhere to do that. So, and then him having enough faith in me after the debacle of Dune. I say debacle. I mean, it has an audience and it has a following. It's a very unusual piece of filmmaking, but it wasn't what everyone expected when it came out. Followed it up with Blue Velvet, and that, because he did that, because David hired me again, it was, he sort of kept me going.
Yeah. Okay. Some people say in this business you don't want to work with a bunch of lead women on a show, that there's a lot of infighting, it's just difficult. You've done Sex and the City and Desperate Housewives. You served your time in both of those.
I've done it, I know.
Truth to any of that kind of rumor, or is it you go and you work and it's a job?
It's a job, and in both of those cases it was a great job because for two reasons. One is the quality of the writing and the creative team is on both cases were exceptional, and also then the actresses that work there are incredibly talented and smart, and they understand how it works. You know what I mean? So everybody's going to get along, regardless of whether you do or not. You get along because what you have is an amazing show. Yeah. And that was true of both in both cases, Sex and the City and Desperate Housewives. I joined both of them a little bit into their creation, so they'd already had a year or two under their belts before I joined the cast. So I would imagine if there were any sort of bugs that needed to be ironed out, they were already finished, already done. Because when I got into both places, the machinery was solid and it was working and running and beautiful.
Does it take a certain kind of actor to work in what's basically a female ensemble show?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I go in and do my scenes with Marcia, and that's pretty much what we do. I mean, we're not the focus by any means, and to some degree, we sort of serve the story, some more than others of the men. But I felt like, for the most part, the stories that were created, the writing, there was equal. It was, Marcia and I both. It was a couple. You know what I mean? It wasn't really me sort of there popping in and saying something and then leaving. So both of us were impacted. I mean, her storyline would then move further into the relationship with the women and how that would impact that circle. But I never felt like I was really just a peripheral part of it.
Yeah. Leaving the show?
Yes.
Just go back to New York?
Yeah, I'm going back. I've gone, I did the first episode of the 7th season, and then I'm gone now for who knows? It could be a long time. It could be forever. It could be they may say, "Oh no, we want you to come back for a couple of shows." I don't know. So, but I'm basically off the show now. They're going to take the character of Bree into a new direction, and they've got new ideas for her. So I am going to. I've done one thing that I think is interesting. We'll see if it has a life. Fred Armisen from Saturday Night Live has got this. It's hard to describe what exactly it is. It's they say sort of think about Flight of the Conchords, and it's kind of in that vein, but it takes place in Portland, Oregon, and I play the mayor of Portland, and and I'm involved with the character that Fred plays and his partner Carrie Brownstein in various ways. So, and it's all improv. I mean, my God, they sent me a script, and I've been. When you do network, every word. You don't mess it up. If it's an of, you have to put the of in. And they're very particular about their dialogue. And this, I learned everything. Letter Perfect came in. Fred handed me, 4 pages, a 4-page sort of thing.
Here you go.
Here you go. Take a look at this, and we're gonna shoot. We're gonna start rolling. We give 10 minutes. Just take a look at it and see. And I'm like, Fred, it's not. There's no way. And he said, don't worry. We'll just make a few passes and take what you want, leave what you don't want. And I was like, oh, it's okay. It's a real improv. Okay, so here we go. So I tried to remember, I went back to my playbook, and I'm going back through when I was in school, improv. Okay, yes, never say no. Always say yes. I was like, okay, so I'll just go with that. And it worked out okay. We had a really lovely time. And they picked up, it's for the Independent Film Channel, and so they're doing, they're looking for content now. So they picked up 10 shows, so we're going to do 10 shows in September, I think, so.
Well, in the last couple seconds we have left, and they're telling me we're just about out of
time.
Really?
Yeah, it went fast.
Your dogs have a website?
Yeah, Mookie and Sam. MookieandSam.com. They, years ago, my wife thought it would be a fun idea to sort of film them and put them up on the... This is kind of when YouTube was happening, and you could do this kind of thing. So we filmed 4, 5, 6 episodes. We actually hired a young director to come in and do it, and so we just shot some stuff and put it up. And
well, we look forward to more work from the dogs and a lot more work from you.
Well,
thank you so much. A pleasure to have you.
Yeah, nice to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Kyle MacLachlan. Cheers.
To order a DVD of this or any episode of InnerVIEWS, please visit HoustonPBS.org.